The Smurg by Jessiy, read by LMX Mabella. Chapter 14. Albus, Hermione asked, confusion and relief warring on her face. For the moment she ignored that Gellert was in front of her, safe and sound, and not at the mercy of Rosier. Albus' intervention seemed more significant somehow, as if he was changing from the slightly immoral man he was into something much better, a man whom she could see herself respecting one day if he continued on this path. An Albus Dumbledore that she could be friends with. The moment he left, I sent a note round to Grindelwald. He had given me his residence as a measure of faith in his complete intention of surrendering. It was a far-flung hope that he was there. I was relieved yet terrified to find out that he was, and that was much less than Merope's feelings on the matter. She was there, you see, when Gellert came flying in the sitting-room in a panic. It took no small amount of persuasion to get her to stay home with Kinder and the other elves. She is much too close to her due date to be apparating all over Europe. Anything less than our full cooperation on the next execution of her plans would have been ignored. Once she gave us our marching orders, we dared do nothing but execute us. My wife has a brilliant mind and a terrifying temper. I don't think my plan would have worked quite so well as hers. However, I will have to tell her how close we were to losing you. Can't imagine I would have walked away unscathed if we did. Oh, with the family jewels, Grindelwald said knowingly, moving just behind Hermione. Don't be so amused. You should have enjoyed the same unlucky fate, Dumbledore grumbled as Grindelwald grimaced. Hermione closed her eyes and breathed. Why had she been so stupid? Stupid enough to believe everything that was told to her. If she had just waited, not run off half-cocked, she swallowed hard, pushing the hot shame that welled up from her stomach. So much for being the most brilliant witch in a century. If Harry had done what she had done, she would have tried to talk him out of it. It was the Department of Mysteries all over again. As easy as it was to block out the buzz of the aura securing and transporting Prince, it was just as hard pretending she wasn't hyper-aware of the blonde man who stepped closer, running the tips of his fingers over the back of her arm. She assumed that he needed the assurance that she was indeed there, alive, in front of him. He could hear his quickened breath, feel it in the fluttering of the curls on the side of her face, and the heat pulsing from his body, enveloping hers. A man in severe aura robes approached them, his face twinned with uncompromising severity and pride in his own accomplishment. Grindelwald, or agreement? Hermione could hear Gellert swallow hard, a swift intake of breath, the slight tingling of his fingers on her arms. Very well, he said. Wait, Hermione whispered, barely audible, but it was enough to stop the man behind her from leaving. Yes? He questioned, hopefully just as quiet as she. His hand snaked around her waist, stopping to rest on her belly. Reminiscent of Merope's wedding, where he had watched her sister get married from the safety of the house with her, his arm wound around her waist, his chest pressed to her back. Dumbledore pulled the aura away, murmuring about something he would like an opinion on, leaving Hermione and Gellert alone, if only for a moment. What does this mean? For us? Hermione asked in a breathy whisper. Gellert pulled her body snugly into his, wrapping his larger one around hers until his lips were at the shell of her ear. His heartbeat was strong and steady against her back, picking up pace the longer she stayed in his arms. I am yours, always yours. The world could burn and I would still be yours. The only thing this means is that I must stand trial and take my punishment laid down by the word. And when I'm free, I will find you. Isn't that what you wanted? What you demanded of me? What makes you think that I will wait? He said breathlessly, ignoring the way he threw her own words back in her face. Tom, Gellert said with absolute certainty. Tom, Hermione whirled around, in the circle of his arms, confusing, marrying her delicate features. What does Tom have to do with this? Only one of the greatest passion and love would tempt you away from that boy. If this isn't love, then there is no such thing. I will never leave Tom. I know. He smiled, sliding his arms all the way around her and tucking his face into the cradle of her shoulder. And I would never ask it of you. You may never be free of Azkaban. I know. There may never be a great love affair between us. Oh, you have little faith, he chuckled. Do you not believe that I may yet have an ace up my sleeve? You promised you would pay for your crimes, face justice. But you never said I couldn't bargain for the best possible outcome. Are they here to take you into custody? She nodded towards the Aurors. He mummed the affirmative. What did you agree to be here? When this is all over, love, I will answer your every question. Until then. Hermione felt Gellert stiffen before the authoritative voice of the Aurors ruined their shortened moment. Gellert Grindelwald, you are under arrest for war crimes spanning the globe, and are to be brought before the Wizengamot, the Mercousa, and the Normangard Trial Council. Gellert squeezed her tight for a moment and dropped a kiss on her neck before whispering in her ear, I love you. If the world could have shattered, it would have done so in that very moment. Her breath caught and her face went numb. It wasn't just the words that he said, it was the way he said it. How great was his yearning? How deep had she unintentionally buried herself in his heart? How deep was he in her own heart? His hand dropped from around her body, and she felt the bone-chilling loss. It didn't matter that for a month she had mercilessly chased him, confronted him, took him to Azkaban, threatened him. She wished to the depths of her core that he was not Gellert Grindelwald, the darkest Dark Lord to reign before Voldemort rose. How could she have fallen in love with such a man as this? But she saw it, the remorse, the redemption, and it was only possible because she, Hermione Granger Slytherin, travelled to the past, curtailing not one but two Dark Lords. Gratitude for the Smurg rose in her stomach, spreading outward until she felt it tingling in her very fingertips. This is not something Hermione could have accomplished on her own, and for the first time since she travelled back to the past, she was at peace with the sacrifices she made for herself and others. Limitless possibilities danced in front of her eyes, as those who died or were never born paraded across her mind. The world she left would never be. She saw peace, reform, justice. She saw Harry and Neville on the platform hugging their mums and dads goodbye. The halls and dorms would overflow with classmates that never existed before. Her own children, perhaps. When she first landed in this time, she wondered why. Why was she left in this time where Tom wasn't even born? Now she knew. The Smurg used her to save countless lives, and in return brought Hermione to where he was, Gellert Grindelwald, a love that should never exist. A love that would inspire the world, once in 1,000 years kind of love. He was her reward. He was her, and she was his. And if his complete surrender didn't prove that he was capable of being a better man, she didn't know what would. Hermione watched as Gellert stood tall and proud as the Auror bound him and took his wand. A small contingent of Aurors circled him and began moving him outside of the tent and Hermione's well-laid ward. Their eyes met briefly once more, his signature flirtatious grin flashing before they managed to pull him out of the tent. With a small pop, she knew they were gone. To Azkaban or the Ministry, she didn't know. Leaving Dumbledore as her only company. Why are you like this? Hermione asked petulantly, using magic to pack up the contents of the tent. Like what? Dumbledore asked, twinkling. Hot and cold. 1 minute I'm convinced you are worse than any Dark Lord, and then you do something which makes me question, which makes me hesitate to write you off. Sometimes I full on hate you, Albus, and other times— Dumbledore interrupted with an obnoxious twinkle. You adore me. And other times, she began while ignoring his interruption, I can almost tolerate you. I'm sure I don't know what you mean. Hermione's lips thinned to a barely perceptible line. You saved me from being bound forever to a man by force, but then you are like this. It really makes me wonder. What kind of men are you? The best kind. The most aggravating kinds. Isn't most family aggravating at times? Hermione walked out of the tent, happy that each item fit neatly in her bag before she turned around and stripped the now empty tent of wards. Slowly, that too broke down, and after a moment of maneuvering, laid it nicely in her bag. That bag is quite impressive. I wonder which department did it for you, Dumbledore said with great humour, as if he were waiting for the punchline. I'm quite capable without help for such things. Oh, it has nothing to do with being capable or not. It is illegal to cast an undetectable extension charm without a permit. Dumbledore was now smiling, twinkling and smiling. What was the world come to that she would be mercilessly teased by Albus Dumbledore? Hermione groaned as he continued. Not that I would turn you in mind, but if it was something you wanted to keep to yourself, you might mention how wonderful and helpful I have been to my wife. It almost sounds like you respect her opinion. I respect her very quick dueling reflexes. At least she doesn't let you bully her. I wouldn't bully her. That's my wife, not a class adversary that you are talking about. Exactly, and don't forget it either. Hermione followed Albus into the house, tired and ashamed. Merope was there, trembling with her deep and unstable emotions, hands over her bulging belly. Tom, her reason for being, her everything. And because of him, she now had Merope in her life. He was the best and worst part of her life, and he wasn't even born yet. You're home, Merope said, tears shining in her eyes. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have left, Hermione said slowly, walking forward. Her stomach was a mess of heavy stones and guilt. Leaving had put them in danger, so much danger. What if it wasn't a machination of a jilted almost lover? What if someone wanted to get both Hermione and Albus out of the way? A clear path to Merope and her son. A son who would be a half-blood. Not that many people knew that, but a few did or might suspect, and that was enough to paint a target on the child's head. Would have worked, too. Dumbledore had followed her, protected her, leaving Merope vulnerable. And that was all on Hermione. She ran cold at the sudden thought. She would have to be more careful from here on out. It was an impossible situation. You were struggling to juggle all of your roles. All of the information you have. Your agenda is long and complicated, we understand, Merope said compassionately, giving her forgiveness that she didn't deserve. That is no excuse. I'll let my emotions, my feelings overtake my sense. I was enraged that someone would block me from Gellert. I wasn't focusing where I should. Even if I do nothing with Gellert, he will still be defeated. You took a vow, Merope chuckled. What exactly could you have done? This vow wouldn't break me. The compulsion is fierce, true, but I've lived through worse. It wouldn't kill me, I'm sure of it. Albus cleared his throat. Perhaps it was unfair of me asking for something like that, but he has surrendered with the intention of living out his sentence. You are free. I don't want it assumed, Albus. I want you to release her from the vow. Merope glared at her husband, who was now rubbing circles into her back with one hand and her belly with the other. Dumbledore dropped his head on her shoulder, releasing a big pent-up breath. If that is what you want. I do, she said forcefully, looking Hermione in the eyes as she said it. Hermione bit her lip and closed her eyes against the tears welling. No one had stuck up for her more than Merope, not even Harry. It was usually the other way round with her other friends. With Merope it was more, deeper. Wordlessly, Hermione reached out and took Merope's hand in hers, squeezing it a little. Sisters have to stick together, Merope whispered through her tears. Thank you, Hermione said through her own tears. Albus started to back up and leave, slowly, one step at a time. Don't you think you're getting out of this, Albus? Merope said harshly without turning. You are the reason that Hermione was in Germany to begin with. Has Gellert met all of your demands? Yes. Well then, what are you waiting for? He mumbled something unintelligible. Albus! Fine, Hermione. I, Albus, Brian Wulfric Dumbledore, release you from your vow, although I will uphold mine until the very end and my dying day. Golden threads snapped like fireworks in the air between them, rebinding only Albus to his word, severing the bonds that held Hermione so fiercely. Merope clapped as Hermione tried to blink away the bright lights that blinded her. This calls for a celebration, a true celebration. We are finally a true family, one bound to each other by each other's want, not beholden because of unbreakable vows and promises that have nothing to do with being a family. Merope bustled away into the kitchen, her excited voice rousing the elves into making a veritable feast, leaving Albus and Hermione alone in the awkward silence. I can't stay. I have to return to Hogwarts tonight, Albus said, smiling at the place where Merope had disappeared. So, eat and go. I can't, Albus said rightfully. All right, Hermione said. She bit her lip and shifted from foot to foot until she had the courage to meet his eyes. Thank you for saving me from Prince. I don't know how to repay you for that. You already have, Albus said with a lopsided smile, making his small beard hitch on the one side. In what way? You stopped Gellert, and I did not have to do anything. I'm forever in your debt. Hermione chuckled. I guess we will just have to call it an even exchange. Albus nodded, twinkling. I guess we will. They looked at each other with mutual understanding, equals for the first time ever, and it wasn't terrible. Good night, Hermione. Night, Albus. Albus nodded, still smiling, and walked out of the room, headed towards the busy kitchen to say goodbye to his busy wife. Hermione trudged up the stairs, more tired than she thought she was, grasping the railing tightly with each step. Loneliness crashed over her as she heard Merope's tinkling laugh float up from the kitchen. But that was okay, because everything she set out to do in coming to the past had been completed. Now she just had to wait and enjoy the fruits of her labor. Months passed as Hermione waited for news of Gellert's childhood. Stacks of the Daily Prophet sat undisturbed next to her chair in the sitting room next to the fire. They were all the same content, even if the pictures and dates changed. Grindelwald captured, for good this time. But not one word of anything else. No talks of settlements or of deals. No talks of even where he was being held. Nothing. Merope walked into the room, kind of following behind with a tray of warm milk. A frown marred her usual serene face, both clenched fists digging into her lower back. "Hermione!" Merope sat with sweat beading on her forehead. "Yeah?" Hermione looked at her in worry before nearly bursting out into laughter. December 30th, Tom's birthday, of course. "Call Albus, he should be here." Merope sat on the couch where Kinder had spread a water-resistant blanket. Once she was settled, Kinder handed her the saucer of full warm milk. Hermione smiled rose and reached for the flue powder, admiring the emerald flames as she tossed it among the logs, stating clearly her destination before stepping through. "Albus Dumbledore, Hogwarts Castle." "Hermione?" Albus said with a great deal of surprise from behind his desk in the Transfiguration Professor's office. "Merope is in labor." Short and sweet, to the point. "Now?" he asked, wide-eyed and breathless, more afraid than she had ever seen before. "Now," she affirmed with a smile. It was quite nice seeing Dumbledore so off-kilter. He abruptly stood from his desk, looking all around the room before helplessly back to her. Hermione looked around with raised eyebrows. "Is there something the matter?" she asked. "What do I bring?" Hermione frowned and looked at him as if he completely lost his facilities. "Bring?" "What do I bring for the boy?" He began to panic. "What do fathers bring?" "Yourself," she said, not quite following. "She wants you to be there, and I dare say that is the greatest gift any parent can give their child, their time." "Just me?" "Just you." He nodded. "Great, I can do that." He stood behind his desk, unmoving, staring off into nothing. "Everything all right?" she asked slowly, his smile growing as excitement began taking over. "Tom is going to be born." "My son, my Tom," Albus said, finally focusing on Hermione. "Our Tom." He rounded the desk quickly, grabbing a handful of flue powder, and barely waited for the flames to change color before stepping in. Hermione walked to his desk and left a note in case anyone came looking for him, following him back through to the sitting room of her home, which he shared with Merope. He was already kneeling next to her, enveloping her hand in his much larger one, murmuring comforting words in her ear. Hermione smiled, glad of their affection. Merope's anger had lingered as one week bled into the next. Not a day went by when there wasn't some kind of delivery for Merope. Flowers, gifts, chocolates, whatever she craved, whatever she wanted. He would go to the ends of the earth to provide it. In the end, she capitulated with a small nudge from Hermione and forgave her husband. He doubtless learned his lesson. With a cry from Merope, Hermione rushed to her side, taking up her other hand. "What should I do, Kinder?" Hermione asked. "Mistress must take Missy Merope to her room and get a healer. The baby's breech," Kinder squeaked. Things happened very quickly after that. Hermione ran back to the flue. Dumbledore stood and gathered Merope in his arms and strode out of the room as if she weighed no more than a farthing. Once again the fire turned green, and Hermione stepped through the emergency ward of St. Mungo's. People milled around the entrance, talking to even-tempered nurses behind the counters. "Can I help you?" a pleasant and soothing voice asked. Hermione turned and smiled. "My sister went into labor, but the baby is breech." "Where is she?" the nurse asked, puzzled, looking over Hermione's shoulder as if she expected Merope to walk through the fire. "She wants a home birth," Hermione began, but cut off. "Oh," the nurse's nose rose in the air. "She's one of those." "Excuse me?" Hermione asked, indignant, nose flaring. "You will want the midwifery in Godric's Hollow." The nurse had already begun walking away, uninterested, unhelpful. "Bitch," Hermione muttered under her breath. Again she tossed powder into the flue and stepped into the tidy cottage in Harry's hometown. "Hello, dear," a soft voice murmured. The witch was old, decrepit, but had clearly been a beauty when she was young. In fact, she was still handsome, albeit older. My sister is in labour, but the baby's breech, Hermione said in a rush. Merope needed a healer, and she needed one quickly. Puppy! The witch called over her shoulder, chuckling as a young blonde slid into the room, a healer bag draped over her shoulder. The girl couldn't have been more than 14. Nana, we are needed, the witch said to the girl, then turned back to Hermione. My name is Elba Pomfrey, and this is my granddaughter Poppy. Hello, I'm Hermione Slytherin, Hermione said, realizing exactly why the young 14-year-old looked so familiar. She was a healer in training, apparently from the cradle, and grew up to be one of the most respected matrons of Hogwarts, Poppy Pomfrey. Abba looked at her with a small, knowing smile, as if Hermione's secret was laid bare. Abba was a no-nonsense kind of woman and bustled the three of them to the flue, only pausing long enough to ask directions. Moments later, they were all standing in Hermione's sitting room where Merope's moans floated down. This way, Hermione said, leading him up the stairs and into the master where Merope had taken residence. Merope laid on the bed, eyes clenched shut, Albus daubing away the sweat from her brow. Kinder was replacing the towels in hot water every few minutes, running hither and thither, all with an air of calm helpfulness. Expertise in childbirth was one of the reasons why Hermione wanted Kinder to look after Merope in the first place. Excellent. You are having a birthing elf. Rare, that is, Abba said, looking at Kinder approvingly. Without a second's delay, she rolled up her sleeve and approached the bed. I'm Abba, love, and this is Poppy. We are going to help you bring this babe into the world. Abba put her hand on Merope's ankle and waited until Merope was through her latest contraction. Thank you, Merope said as she relaxed back onto the bed. Abba pulled out her wand and cast a spell that showed a ghost of a child in the womb, showing that he was indeed feet first and that it was much too late to turn him. His feet had already propped into the birth canal. Not impossible, just more finicky, Abba muttered, shoving her wand back into her pocket. She followed Merope's sheets to the tops of her thighs and pushed her legs up so that both feet were planted on the bed. The child is coming, Poppy said, handing Abba an uncorked soft pink potion. Abba covered her hands with it and massaged Merope, preparing for her difficult delivery. Merope grunted with the next contraction. Don't push, Abba said. What do you mean, don't push? I don't think there is a choice, Merope snapped. The cord could be wrapped around the baby's neck. If you push too hard, too fast, it could strangle. Fucking A! Merope cursed, trying with all her might not to push. All right, Abba said. Dumbledore, do you take one leg? Hermione the other, like this. Abba showed him exactly how she wanted him to hold her left leg and Hermione the right. Normally you would do this squatting, but I have experience with breech birth, and this is the best way for the best chance of survival for both mom and babe. Merope was glaring, clearly straining against pushing, hating Alba a little more with each contraction. Poppy joined Alba and covered her hands in more of the pink potion, and laid a pair of scissors and a small blanket to the side. Now, love, push, Alba said, and Merope bore down, clenching her teeth, raising thick veins in her neck. Great job, now another. Merope took a breath once again and pushed, only releasing her breath when Alba allowed. Again? You did it, Poppy said, a smile in her voice. It's a boy. Not done yet. Now's the tricky part. This push needs to be nice and slow. If the cord is wrapped around his neck, the sooner we know, the better. If I tell you to stop pushing, do it. It may mean life or death. Now, push. Moments later, Tom's wailing cry filled the room, and Merope broke out in happy tears. The cord wasn't wrapped around his neck? Albus asked. No, lucky lad. But your wife is having some intrauterine hemorrhaging that could become fatal if we are not careful. Poppy will care for your son. She has assisted me many, many times over these last few years and is more than capable of seeing to his care. Merope needs my full attention. Albus nodded and held Merope's legs still, since he wasn't given permission to do otherwise. Albus' brow wrinkled and she pulled her wand back out, heedless of the blood that coated her hands and arms. She murmured spell after spell, even as the blood turned the bedding under Merope black. After several tense moments, Abba relaxed, and a smell of burning flesh rose in the air. She had a tear. It was small enough to hide, but big enough to have killed her. I cauterized the wound, and if she is stable after a half hour, we can be confident that I got everything. Thanks, Merlin, Hermione murmured, patting Merope's hair. Abba motioned for Hermione and Albus to set Merope's legs back down, letting the tired woman rest in comfort. Merlin had nothing to do with it. Albus said with a cackle as she cleaned Merope herself. Puppy, the boy. What's his name? Poppy asked as she laid the squirming baby on Merope's breast. Merope smiled and ran a finger on his cheek. Tom. His name's Tom. To be continued. Thank you for listening to this chapter of The Smurg by Jessiy, read by Ella Max Mabella. If you would like to stay up to date on upcoming chapters and stories, you can follow me on YouTube, Spotify, AO3, Instagram, or Tumblr.